In this chapter, I'm gonna make chocolate chip cookies. These are my favorites. The crispiest edge of a cookie and then gooey, gooey, chewy on the inside. I just need a moment with this cookie. Every family has their perfect cookie, and I have mine. I'm gonna show you my perfect chocolate chip cookie. So for my perfect chocolate chip cookie, we're gonna need butter, shortening, sugar, brown sugar, vanilla extract, eggs, all-purpose flour, baking soda, kosher salt, chocolate, and a little flaky sea salt. The first thing I wanna do is mise out all of my ingredients. And I do that for absolutely every recipe. And that way, if I have all of the ingredients all measured out, then I won't forget anything when I'm making it. So I'm gonna weigh out my flour and my sugar. You can absolutely do this recipe with cups, but you will always hear me say, use a scale. It's just more consistent. I'm gonna weigh out my flour and my sugar. We need 325 grams of flour.
Or 2.5 cups.
A little bit more. There we go. Now I need my sugar. This time I need 1 cup or 200 grams. It's easier if the scale isn't backwards, but I want you to be able to see what I'm doing. There we go. So all of my ingredients are now measured out, and I've had my butter sitting at room temperature. So look at how nice and soft that is. You wanna make sure when you're mixing that everything is at room temperature, and that means your butter, your shortening as well, that should be nice and soft. And your eggs. Your eggs should be at room temperature too, so that everything blends together really smoothly. And I'm gonna use a paddle attachment. I always like to use these paddle attachments that have the rubber edge on them. That way I don't have to scrape the bowl down quite as often. You absolutely don't have to have a stand mixer, but it does make the job easier. You can use a bowl and a spoon or a hand mixer. Whatever you have at home is totally gonna work. It's just the stand mixer does all the work for me. The first thing I'm gonna do is cream together my butter. I'm using unsalted butter and my shortening. And the reason that I'm using both butter and shortening is because nothing beats butter. And a chocolate chip cookie should be really buttery. But for this cookie, I also don't want it to spread so much. I want it to have crisp edges and then soft on the inside. And so by adding some shortening to it, it's not gonna spread as much because the shortening doesn't melt as quickly in the oven, and so it keeps its shape. So cream those things together. And now I can add my sugars. I'm using some white sugar, and the white sugar is brilliant at creating a crispy cookie. But then I also want the flavor of the brown sugar, because the brown sugar has a little bit of molasses left in it, and so you're gonna get a little bit richer flavor, and you're gonna get that slight tenderness on the inside of your cookie. In it goes. I always keep it wrapped until the very last second so that my brown sugar is nice and soft when it goes in the bowl. Whirl that all around until it's nice and smooth. So I'm just gonna scrape this down. I know scraping is not the most joyous part of the baking process, but it's absolutely necessary. You have to do it. So you just have to sort of get into the zen of it all, because if you don't, you might end up with butter on the bottom of your bowl that won't get incorporated into the recipe. So I have all that incorporated. I'm gonna add my vanilla. This is my homemade vanilla. You can use store-bought vanilla. I do recommend that you go with the pure vanilla and not the imitation. Okay, that's all incorporated. Now I'm gonna add my eggs, just one at a time, my room temperature eggs. Try to keep the shells out of there. And I'm gonna let that mix. You want to do your eggs one at a time because if you put them both in there at once, that's a lot of liquid to add to all of that fat, and it will become too hard to incorporate it. Now I need to add my dry ingredients, my flour, my kosher salt, and my baking soda. One thing about baking soda is that it can get lumpy in the jar. So I oftentimes, especially if I can see lumps in it, I'll strain it before I whisk it in there. And I'm just using a little fine mesh sieve, and that way I can get all of the lumps out. Then my kosher salt, and then I'll just whisk that together before I add it to my cookies. And now I can put that into the mix. Then we're gonna put this on low speed and just mix it until it comes together. Very low, because I don't want that flour to fly out of the bowl. And then the second it comes together, I'm gonna stop. So this is where I have all of my decision making to do. What kind of chocolate am I gonna use? And there's so many different kinds. So let me tell you a little bit about it. You can get super, super dark, bitter chocolate that has this really deep, deep, intense flavor and less sugar. And then it goes all the way down to milk chocolate, and it's really creamy. It melts really well, but it's much sweeter. And then there's white chocolate. You can use chocolate chips if you want. You can even use your favorite chocolate candy bar, chop it up and put it in a cookie. Why not? I mean, there's just no end to it. This is a really deep, rich, dark chocolate. And I love that. I love the contrast of that tiny little bit of bitterness in the chocolate with the really sweet base of the cookie. And I'm just gonna chop this up randomly. I like to do this with a serrated knife. I find that it goes through the chocolate really, really well. And you'll see some of the chunks are gonna be big and some of them are gonna be tiny, and some of them will even get down to almost a powdery business, so that every bite will have a teensy bit of chocolate and then a pool of chocolate, and it's just such a great sensation. I find if you use just a regular chef's knife that the chocolate ends up flying all over the kitchen. And so this serrated knife really works well. I'm gonna just pull aside some of the really large chunks that are left to sort of decorate the top, and then the rest of this will go into my bowl. Slide it right in there. And you can see this is the powdery business I was talking about. So don't miss that. You want that all in there too, because that's sort of like the chocolate gold dust. Okay, so all my stuff is in there, just a few whirls. Okay, you just wanna mix it until they all come together. You don't wanna overdo it because that flour has the protein in it, and every time you mix it, once you add your flour, you're getting that gluten all excited, and if you overdo it, it can get tough. So just don't overdo it. Now I wanna take all of my beautiful cookie dough off of the paddle, and then I also wanna use, that's my snack. That's a chef snack. If it jumps off the paddle, I get to eat it. Now what I wanna do is finish this with a rubber spatula because I wanna make sure, again, that all of that butter gets combined into my cookie dough. And I just give it a few turns like this, and then I'm ready to scoop my cookie dough and bake. We're ready to scoop our cookies. I need something to bake it on. I'm gonna use just a baking sheet, a nice heavy-duty metal baking sheet, and some parchment paper. These aren't gonna go directly into the oven. These are gonna get refrigerated. One of the things about cookies is that if you refrigerate the chocolate chip cookies, even for a couple of hours, overnight is best. All of those ingredients marry together, the flavor improves. So bake a couple, but then refrigerate a couple and see if you can taste the difference. See if you like one over the other. My cookie scoop. This is number 16, it would appear. It's the equivalent of a quarter of a cup or 4 tablespoons. So if you don't have a scoop, that's about the size that I'm going for. I'm just gonna scoop all of my cookies. Because I'm not baking these, I can put them really close together. Okay. Once I have all my cookies scooped out, this is when I can dress them up. I'm gonna just press a big chunk of the chocolate right on top there. And so when they bake, that chocolate on the top is gonna pool and be beautiful. These look great. I'm gonna pop this into the refrigerator, and once they're nice and chilled, we can bake them. And like I said, if you can wait 24 hours, they're gonna be even more delicious. My cookies have been refrigerating for about 2 hours. So I'll take them off of here and space them out. I think I can get 6 on here safely. And now I'm just gonna add a little bit of that flaky sea salt. Not too much, but like every bite should have just a teensy bit of it. Okay, so into our oven, still preheated to 375. In about 12, 15 minutes, we're gonna come back and check our cookies. And in the meantime, I'm gonna freeze the rest of this batch because if I have all these cookies around, I'm just gonna eat them. So I wanna freeze these and save them for another time. Okay, this is the moment we've all been waiting for. Look at that! Look at those beautiful pools of chocolate. Do you see how they puff up? That's the baking soda, but then they're gonna relax down. But that puffing up is what gives them the crispiness on the edges and the gooiness in the middle. They are gorgeous. Okay, I want to get these off of the tray because I don't want them to continue to bake. I just barely got 6 on here. You can see these two are like kissing in the middle here. So I think 6 is the limit for these. Carefully slide them off. Those big pools of chocolate from the chocolate chunks that I put on the top. I mean, look at that. They're just beautiful. That's a good sized cookie right there. That'll satisfy a chocolate craving. These are gonna be like molten hot lava chocolate, but I'm gonna break into one anyway because they just look so good. The texture is dynamite. All of that deep, rich, dark, slightly bitter chocolate, the tiny little bit of the vanilla, and the perfect balance of the salt. In this chapter, I showed you how to make my perfect cookie. We talked about the ingredients that it takes to get there, using a portion scoop so that all of my cookies are the same size, chilling the dough so that it would set up in the oven, and most importantly, we talked about scraping that bowl so that all of the ingredients are incorporated. So thanks for joining me. Go and bake, experiment, try different ingredients, try different temperatures, do your thing, and then show me your cookies. I want to see everything that you're baking.